Hello and welcome to Rob from the Internet Talks About Beer, a show where we discuss different styles of beer, beer history, beer flavor profiles. We give shout outs to breweries we think make exceptional beer, and we talk about whatever else happens to come up during the course of our conversation. I'm Rob from the Internet. Let's talk about beer. All right, joining me today is Dave from Beer in Front Podcast. Dave, if you would, please tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in craft beer.
Hey, Rob. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate coming on. I got into craft beer way back in 1989, I'd say.
Oh,
I
you're an
worked for,
OG.
yeah, no kidding. I worked for an airline, and some friends of mine, we went on a day trip to Boston. I'm like, oh, we'll check Boston out, see what's going on here. And we stopped for lunch, and I'm like, oh, there's a local Boston beer here, when in Rome. So I grabbed the Samuel Adams Boston Lager. And it just blew me away. One, from pouring it in, the glass, the color, because all I had here in Chicago growing up was old style and Strohs and beers of that nature. So to see the dark,
Blatz.
yeah, the dark caramel colors, and it's just like, whoa, what is this? So then you had this sip of it, and it was unlike anything I've ever had before. So that started me, on this long road to ruin that I'm in now, where I just, love craft.
It's a terrible road to be on.
Yeah, exactly. But no, ever since then, it's, then I've always looked, when I went on trips with my friends to find different things. And then in the mid 90s, here in Chicago, it was that initial first wave of craft beer and craft breweries where you were able to really expand your palate. And I remember, Pete's Wicked was big then, got into that, having a Sierra Nevada with, just the Cascade hops. It was like, whoa, what is this? And now that's, considered calm compared to other triple IPAs and everything. But yeah,
Right.
my love of craft beer started way back in '89.
Awesome. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about Belgian style doubles. Specifically, today we're both going to be drinking and talking about the Chimay Red, the premier, which is their Belgian double. For people who don't know, the term double is a Belgian Trappist beer naming convention. Um, the origin of the double is that it's a strong brown beer brewed originally by the Westmalle Abbey in 1856, 1857. The history is not completely clear on when exactly they first really started producing it. It was first put on sale to the public to help fund what the Abbey was trying to do in 1861. So it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the oldest beer in the world, but it's definitely not new in any stretch of the word. In 1926, they changed the original recipe, and it was sold as a double Bruin, which I think would be kind of cool. I mean, a Bruin is a great style of beer all by itself. Following World War II, the Abbey beers became popular in Belgium and then soon started emigrating to other parts of the world. And I mean, as we know, you can't throw a stick these days without hitting a brewery that makes a Belgian double. I mean, it's a great style. Characteristically known for their dark color, strong flavors. You get your stone fruits, but you also get raisins, and you get prunes, you get plums. Depending on how long it's sat, you get like rose hip flavors in it as well. I mean, it's pretty good. The malts are highly caramelized, which also leads to the darker color and things like that. And they add caramelized beet sugar to the original recipes, which for people who don't know, sugars are what get turned into alcohol by the yeast. But caramelized beet sugar, especially, it 100% gets consumed by the yeast and turned into alcohol. So unlike other sugars which leave behind residues, the caramelized beet sugar just disappears into the beer, which gives it can give it a drier finish. Not all doubles have a dry finish, but most of them have a mid to fairly dry finish on them. So, it's one of those beers that once you've had it, the first time you have it, you might be like, oh, what is this? And then the second time you have it, you're like, oh yeah, what is this? And then the third time you're like, yeah, give me that. It's one of those that, at least for me anyway, it wasn't one that I immediately liked the first time I tried it. After a couple of glasses in, I decided that, yeah, okay, this is pretty good. And now it's one of my favorite styles. I mean, it's one that I brew, it's one that I drink, and it's one that I recommend to people, especially if you're looking to be a little more adventurous with your palate. If you're stepping away from, say, your pilsners or your standard lagers, this will give you something that's a little more festive for your mouth. And it's a great fall beer. It goes great with all the foods that we eat in the fall. So you're eating your roast turkey, you're eating your pumpkin pie, all that kind of stuff. This is the type of beer that goes well with that kind of stuff. You agree, Dave?
Yeah. Although it's a little warm here, it's not the fall here in Chicago, so it's a little toasty, but it's still going to be a good beer. I'm looking forward to having it. I haven't had this probably in a couple of years, so it's been a while since I've had one. So I'm looking forward to once we started talking about this. So I'm like, oh, very good. So it's been resting in the refrigerator. I just took it out about a half hour to warm it up a little bit. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, let's not delay. Let's pop these bad boys open and
okay.
All right. Here's the little cage.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There it goes.
Yeah, sometimes they can be a little stubborn.
All right.
So for people who don't know, this is a bottle conditioned and bottle secondary ferment type of beer. So it's bottled, and then it does half of its fermentation, the second half of its fermentation while it's in the bottle, probably while it's being shipped to you. And most of the time, if you look, there will be sediment in the bottom of these bottles. So you don't want to just pour it all out. You want to kind of decant it out, because you don't want that gunk in the bottom of your glass. It's not a good experience.
No.
All right. So yeah, holding it up, I mean, it's definitely caramel colored.
Yes.
It's slightly hazy, which is acceptable in the style. According to the official style guide for this type of beer, it should be clear to slightly hazy. So this one falls into the slightly hazy variety.
Yeah, mine does too. I think I have a little more carbonation than yours.
Yeah, well, nice glass though. I do like the Tiku glass. Those are. But traditional style is the tulip style glass, so that's what I grabbed. My go-to typically for most beers is a Nanak pint or a Teku, but because this one specifically says, "Hey, use a tulip glass," and I happen to have a few laying around, I grabbed one.
Tulip glasses were from other breweries, so I'm like, I'll grab just the plain Tiku here.
Yeah, well, mine's from another brewery too, but you can't see it because
okay.
So on the nose, I'm getting banana, obviously, because of the Belgian yeast. For people who don't know, Belgian yeast typically produce a banana scent as one of the primary esters that you'll get off of these styles of beers. And then it should be fairly fragrant, so kind of perfumey. And you might pick up a little bit of spice in the aroma, and you should. I mean, you should get like a peppery type of aroma in there as well. And depending on how long it's aged and how warm it is, you might also smell a little bit floral. So like roses or even in some cases, I've had people tell me tulips. But so yeah, it's the color should be. This is actually probably the lightest you'd want a double to be. You'd want it to be this coppery color all the way up to a super dark brown, almost so dark that you can't see through it, even if it is a clear beer. Visually, there should be a fair amount of bubbles rising up out of your glass and producing the head on the top. So they should be medium to fast rising. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lot of carbonation in beer. It just means that there's a lot of little bubbles. Alcohol on the nose, you shouldn't really get any, but you might get a little bit, depending on where at in the alcohol spectrum the beer falls. As far as flavor, oh yeah, so that's one of the things about this. I mean, right up front, I'm getting that malty, caramely goodness, followed immediately by prunes, raisins, and fig. I mean, I get that. I feel like I could be sitting somewhere in a desert oasis, eating fruits off the trees with the flavor this has.
Yeah, that's what I had at first too. That sweetness hit you, from the malts, and then all of a sudden, it was the stone fruits. It's like, whoa, very nice.
Yeah, it is. It's a great beer in general. And like I said, it tends to be more of for most people, it tends to be more of a fall and winter style of beer. For me, it's a whenever I decide, oh yeah, I want a double.
It's a day that ends in Y. Okay, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, that's right. It's a day that has 24 hours in it, right? Yeah. Okay, I'll have a double. Yeah. So the color, like I said, comes from using caramelized malts and caramelized beet sugar. But there's actually a chemical process, and I'm going to butcher the name of the chemical process. I believe it's Maillard, the Maillard process, which is a reaction between proteins and enzymes, which cause the brown color and those figgy and date and raisin flavors in foods as well as beers. Which means that if you're eating, say, a nice big chunk of roast or a steak off the grill, this beer is going to go great with it. It's one of those that it much like an ESB. It's a fairly well-rounded beer. You can have it with a lot of different foods. You can have it with desserts. You can have it with entrees. You can have it with appetizers or as an appetizer. Yeah. So you might pick up some, like I said, the caramel flavors. You might pick up chocolate flavors in it, because of the special Belgian strains of yeast that they use. These beers often have like a mild spiciness to them, not like a hot spiciness to them, but like spiced food. So like if you're having, like if you ever had mulled wine, or if you've ever had pumpkin pie, things, or sweet potato pie, you get those spices that are in there. They're not necessarily adding any heat, but they're adding a lot of different flavor. So you might pick up coriander, you might pick up black pepper, things like that. Other foods that it goes well with is smoked sausages. Hey, and you're a Chicago guy, so you like sausage, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Rinded cheeses. So if you got a cheese that has a nice thick rind on it, it's gonna, this beer is gonna complement that well. And then chocolate. I mean, if you like chocolate and you like beer, you're gonna like this beer. So, time to take another drink here.
Yes, absolutely.
So now that my mouth has kind of acclimated to the beer after the first sip, you can pull out a little bit more. So in the flavor, I'm getting more of that banana in the flavor now.
Yeah. I'm getting that. I'm maybe getting like a little clove for me.
Yep. Yeah. And that's one of the spices that you might pick out of it. You might get some clove. You might get a little bit of coriander and pepper. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm not really getting the spiciness out of this yet, because we're only a second drink in.
Yeah.
but I'm getting more of that banana, and I'm getting the malty sweetness more on the middle as opposed to up front, like you did on the very first sip. So it's one
Yeah.
of those, your mouth. It takes a minute for your mouth to get used to this beer because it's not your typical lager.
No.
So
Yeah, you're not going to pound this down.
no. So this particular one comes in. Typically, the Premier comes in at about 7%. It does vary a little bit from batch to batch, but I think they put 7% on all the labels. I've seen it as low as 6.5, and I've seen doubles that are as high as 9.5, 10. So much higher than that, you're getting into the range of another beer.
Yeah.
So fermentation byproducts for this beer, because it does do its secondary fermentation in the bottle while it's being shipped from the Trappist brewery. You'll get a slight yeast haze in it, which is what we're seeing in this one. And when I brew it here at home, same thing. I've never had one that's been completely clear. There's always been a slight haze to it, and that's fine. I mean, as long as you're not drinking down like chunks of yeast and things like that, having a little bit of haze in the beer is fine. That's one of the biggest things that people who are new to craft beer have to make that adjustment. They're so used to their beer being virtually transparent that you can see everything through it, that they wonder, oh, hey, is this right? Is this something wrong?
Spoiled, something wrong with it?
Yeah. Now, with the advent of the New England style IPA, that's taken a lot of that questioning away, because everyone knows that, oh, hazy IPAs are a thing now. So now they just assume if a beer has haze, it's supposed to have haze. But there are still a few people out there who might not know that having a little bit of haze in your beer is not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
So yeah, as I said earlier, the traditional serving vessel for this is a tulip style glass. It should be served between 10 and 13 degrees Celsius. That is 50 to 55 degrees for my friends who aren't metric centric. Yeah, well, yeah. And to be fair, I'm originally from Rockford, Illinois, so I'm not metric centric by birth, but I live in Canada now, so I know metric, I know imperial, so I switch between the two. But I put both sets of units out there because not everybody knows. I mean, no. Mouthfeel on this, it should have a medium body to it, and it should kind of coat your mouth as you drink it. And it should stick around for a few seconds after you swallow. You should still kind of have that. Like for me, I'm getting the banana flavor afterwards, especially when I open my mouth. You get it's almost like that. Was it Laffy Taffy banana? It's it's that kind. It's that kind of banana. It kind of sticks around a little bit. But yeah, so then the finish should dissipate after a few seconds, and you might have a little bit of a coating from the beer on your tongue still, but the flavors have kind of dissipated after a few seconds. I don't know what else I can really say about that, but I will say that Chimay, not only do they make beer, they actually make cheeses that go along with their beers.
Now, have you ever seen them in Canada? The cheeses?
I have never seen the cheeses here in Canada.
Okay. No.
Yeah. I used to see them in the States.
Okay.
But it was only at specialty shops,
All right. Yeah, because maybe I haven't, just wasn't paying attention, but I don't recall ever seeing the cheeses here.
Yeah. I would love to get over to Belgium and visit the brewery, because they do offer visitors, and they offer guided tours, and you can learn a little bit more about the history of the Abbey and their partnership with the brewery, because the brewery is actually a separate entity. They rent space from the monks at the Abbey. They use water that's pulled from the wells on the grounds of the Abbey. So every beer that has the Chimay label on it is brewed in Belgium, and it is using water that comes from the Abbey where the brewery resides. It's actually trucked. I think it's 40 or 50 kilometers away. So that's about 30 miles or so, 20 to 30 miles from the Abbey is actually where it gets. So they take it from there and they actually bottle it at a different facility, but it's still in Belgium there. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. The history of this. All the proceeds that the Abbey gets from renting the space to the brewery goes back to the community, which is a great thing. And that's kind of the MO for all Trappist style beers. The monks brew their beer, they sell it to pay for upkeep of the Abbey and for good causes in the area where they're at, which is kind of cool. If more people did that, the world would be a better place.
Yeah.
So, Dave, tell me a little bit about your podcast, how long you've been doing it, things like that.
Can you hear me? You froze up on me for a second.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just for me. No, I can hear you fine. For a while, while you were sipping, your screen froze, and I didn't hear you, but you're back.
Oh, I just asked if you could. Yeah, if you could tell me a little bit about your podcast and things like that.
Yeah, the podcast I started right before the pandemic, so February of 2020, and I've had to change the formats around with COVID. So now it's, for the most part, it's me talking about maybe a beer we have forgotten. I would talk about this. I would talk about just beers that aren't new anymore, aren't trendy. There aren't the hip things that everybody wants to check in on Untapped. Like your Sierra Nevada Pale Ales, your Sam Adams Boston Lagers, things of that nature. Even, beers like I've had Schlitz, things that maybe you've forgotten that they're still a good beer, but people kind of always want to go on to the new thing. So that's one segment of it. I try to talk about Chicago area, like brewery news, things of that nature. And at the end, there's people that annoy me during the week, and I call them jag-offs. So I'll have my segment where I call off the jag-offs of the week. But no, it's been going on since February. I'm taking the month of August off just to kind of take a break. And then starting September 1st, we'll be back cranking out shows once a week.
Once a week, awesome. And
yes,
I assume you can find it anywhere you can get podcasts. You can basically find it if people are looking for it.
Yeah, your Spotify's, your Apples, your Good Pods, Google, Amazon. Any place that a mediocre podcast is available, you'll find mine.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with having a mediocre podcast. I mean, I've got a mediocre YouTube series, so I don't even know if I'd call this mediocre yet. I don't have that many followers yet, but I'm hoping to get it up to that point. So I know I interrupted you. You were saying something about the beer before I asked you about your podcast.
Yeah, I'm getting more as it's warming up a little bit more, and I'm drinking it. I'm getting, like you mentioned, the banana flavor, and it's hit me right in the middle of the tongue, and it lingers there for a bit. But yeah, it's that banana, that stone fruity, like taste right in the middle of the tongue.
Yeah. So I know this is going to be, it's kind of a tough question because I don't have any other good examples other than Chimay of people who make doubles. Do you know of any in the Chicago area that make an exceptional double?
I'm sure there are. Not that I could think of off the top of my head. But I'm sure there has to be a ton of them.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I was thinking about it. I'm like, do I know any breweries that actually make a double off the top of my head? And I didn't. So, normally I include a few breweries that I think make this style well, but for this one, when I think of double, this is what I think of when I go to the store to buy beer.
This would be the first. I'm looking, I have some notes here, but I don't see any US based breweries on my list of notes of, other places that make them.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's not that it's not a popular style, but it is more of a specialty style, I think. It's funny. So today I'm actually recording another show after we're done. I'm recording one later this evening, and we're talking about Chimay Blue. So the dark strong ale. So for me, it's a double Chimay day. So uh, a lot of the notes I have for this episode are actually the
Mhm.
same notes I'm going to use for the next episode. But yeah, yeah. So I would love to give a shout out to a brewery that I know makes a good double, but honestly, I couldn't
Yeah.
think of any off the top of my head. Normally, I have
Yeah.
3 or 4 breweries that given in any given style that make a great beer. Uh, any new breweries popping up in the Chicago area near you?
Uh, Not really. Hop Butcher, which is pretty big, they're going to take over the original Half Acre space uh, in the next couple of months. Half Acre is closed its original location, and they're focusing on the larger area or the larger brewery that they have, which is less than 2 miles away. So it's not like they've left the city altogether. So Hop Butcher is going to move in and have their own place, their own tap room. So that's been the big buzz, like in the area where I live right now, that's coming up
Right,
soon.
right. It's funny. I was recording a show the other day. We were rewinding a little bit. You were talking about growing up in the Chicago area, getting Schlitz and things like that, and I brought up hams
Yeah.
during another recording I did, and my guest was like, "How to say you're from the Midwest United States without actually saying you're from the Midwest United
Yeah.
States?"
If you could sing the From the Land of Sky Blue Waters song, you're from the Midwest.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about things, and I was like, "Well, my grandfather had a bar in his house. He had added on to his house, and he put in like his little rec room, and he had a couple pinball machines and a pool table. And he had a bar, and he had a ham sign behind the
Okay.
bar
With the bears on it too? Do they have the Hams Bears?
Yeah. So, and it
Okay.
was cool because it was it was one of those. It was a moving. It was one of those hands that had the carousel thing in it, but it was
Yeah.
like those pictures that if you look at it from one direction, you see one thing. You look at it from another direction. So if you looked at it from one side, it was the Hams Bears floating down the river, and if you looked at it down the other side, they were just they were standing at the river. It was kind of cool.
Now, you mentioned before that you're a home brewer and you brewed this.
Correct.
How has that come out?
Oh, my double, in my opinion, was fantastic. I
Okay.
gave it to a few of my friends, and they all thought it was good. I deviate
All right.
from a standard recipe. Typical double only has like 4 to 5 grains. Mine actually has 7 different grains I use in it
All right.
because I'm just trying to pull out different flavor profiles. But yeah, I made a 60-liter batch, which is 10 gallons for you U.S. people.
Yeah.
And it lasted all of a month.
All right.
So yeah, it was pretty good. It came in a little high. It came in at 9.7% alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
So it was not something that you could drink 3 or 4 in a row unless you're like me, a casual alcoholic.
Yeah. Seasoned veteran.
That's right.
Yeah.
I bring this up. Often. Was it Jimmy Fallon who does Jimmy Fallon does the thank you notes on his late night show,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Thank you, craft beer, for making my alcoholism seem like a fun hobby."
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I've been a home brewer for about 15 years,
Okay.
on and off. Right now I'm off because my equipment broke and I have not replaced it yet. And due to shipping and things like that, I looked at buying a new set of equipment, and it was like, well, yeah, you can get it in 4 months. So I'm like, well, I'll just wait 4 months, and then
Yeah.
so it's going to be a no brew summer for me, which is kind of sad, but that just means I have to buy other people's beer, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Keep the economy moving, support local business. Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. So, the whole pandemic thing has been just a big pain in the ass overall. But one really good thing here in Ontario has come out of it. And that's the fact that all of the craft brewers are allowed to sell and ship their beer online. So,
Okay.
normally my wife and I would hop in the car and we'd take a long weekend. We'd drive 5-6 hours north, go through the cottage country and pick a bunch of breweries to hit. But we haven't been able to do that, obviously, because of everything that's going on. But all those breweries now ship, so we can go online, we can order their beers and at least get them. So at least I'm still able to try all these beers from these different places, which is nice. Prior to the pandemic, that wasn't a thing. I'm hoping it doesn't go away when everything returns to whatever we call normal these days. So, but
yeah, you might as well, let those small places keep that revenue stream going.
Well, that not only that, but here in Canada, alcohol is highly regulated by the government, and they take a cut of everything. I mean, it's no real difference than
There's no
the United
difference.
States.
Yeah.
The liquor laws here are very similar. I don't know if you're familiar with liquor laws in like Pennsylvania, where you have to go to specific stores to buy beer and specific stores to buy
Yeah,
liquor.
I remember the one time I was in Canada, we had to go, I think it was called the beer store, the beer shop, and it was a
The beer store.
specific place we had to pick up beer. And I kind of outgrew it a little bit, but I remember I had my Molson Canadian windbreaker that I wore for about 10 years that I bought at that place.
Yeah. So up here, we have the beer store, which just sells beer, and then we've got what's called the LCBO, which is literally the name of the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, LCBO,
All right.
and they sell your spirits and your wine, and they sell craft beer. Mm-hmm. So that's where you go for those things. But it's highly controlled by the government, and it's highly taxed and everything like that. So the government, I think, has seen a large influx of tax dollars because they're allowing all these places to ship. These places are selling more beer. They're making more money. Therefore, they're paying more taxes. I don't think the government's going to take that away after everything goes back to a normal state, but you never can tell with government. They do what they want.
Do any of those places, are they allowed to ship to the States?
No,
No.
That's actually a big thing. It's really hard to have individual breweries ship over cross border because of trade regulations. There has to be like an importer on one side, an exporter on the other side to handle those transactions.
Well, I think that's us. I think we could set that up. There you go. Perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
I know every time I go back to Illinois to visit friends and family, I always come back with beer from the States because there are just some beers that I can't get up here. Like I can't get Brewery and I can't get Brewery Tureau, and I can't get Off Color up here. I can't get New Glarus. I have to go to Wisconsin to get my New Glarus beer.
I can't get it either, and I'm an
hour
and a half away.
Right. So I used to live in Rockford, which is where I'm from, which was like 30 minutes from the border. So I would always go to Beloit, Wisconsin, and I would buy all my New Glarus beers and then bring them back. But so there's I'm not saying that there's not a lot of fantastic beer here in Canada, because there's a fucking shit ton of fantastic beer up here in Canada. But they're just some that you miss. I miss being able on Black Friday going and getting my Bourbon County barrel aged stouts. Can't get them up here. Well, I take that back. You can if you're lucky enough to be at the one or two stores for the Liquor Control Board that actually have a couple, and they only allow you to buy like one or two. And they never have the variants. It's always just the standard Bourbon County stout. But I miss things like that, and I miss my Dogfish Head beers and things like that. Can't get that stuff here. But that being said, I found a lot of analogs that match style for style. But it's funny, one of my favorite breweries in the area here is called Nickelbrook, and one of my other ones is called Collective Arts. They both sell in the States.
Yeah. I've never had Nickelbrook, but Collective Arts I'm a big fan of. They make some really good beers.
They make fantastic beers. They knock it out of the park consistently.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think I had a sour from them that I just absolutely loved. It was outstanding.
Yeah. They're about 45 minutes from me. They're in downtown Hamilton, which is I guess that's the next the closest big town to us is Hamilton. We're kind of like the town I live in is a decent sized town. There's 100 and some thousand people.
Okay,
but but Hamilton has like 500,000 people, and then Toronto has a couple million people, and Hamilton is closer to Toronto, but we live kind of out in farm country because we wanted to get out of Hamilton because prices for housing is just crazy there. But yeah, so Collective Arts, they make fantastic beer. They actually have, I think, a brewery. I think it's in is it in Buffalo, or it might be in Brooklyn? They opened a second location. So they've got their Canadian brewery, and they've got a U.S. brewery. Nickelbrook is based out of a town called Burlington, which is about an hour from me. But yeah, they I used to actually, I was surprised when I lived in Rockford, I would see their stuff at the Woodman stores. So
yeah, Woodman's is a great place. That's usually like if I have to pick up some New Glarus, just run right over the borders, hit that Woodman's there, and their selection is killer.
Hey, we're a little over the half-hour mark, so this is typically where I end the show. If you've got anything you'd like to give a shout out to, or anything you'd like to highlight, this is your opportunity. What's going on in your life? What are you doing? What do you want to give a shout out to?
No, if support your local brewery, no matter where you are. It's always time to have a good beer. Support your local brewery. If you think of it, if you have a couple minutes to kill, if you want to check out the podcast, you could just search for Beer in Front. Like I said, wherever you listen to a podcast. Most shows run about 20 to 30 minutes. They're not too long. Good for your commute to work. And that's it. Rob, I really appreciate you having me on. It's nice to talk to you. I know we met a couple weeks ago on the Beer Twitter Zoom chat, thanks to Brian in St. Louis. So nice to meet you virtually in person.
Right. Yeah. Well, when the borders finally open up completely and I can get back to, I can get back to the States anytime I want. I'm a U.S. citizen, but my wife, on the other hand, can't.
Okay.
So until the borders open up, we're kind of stuck up here. But yeah, we plan on getting back into the States, because, I'm so used to being able to travel wherever I want that this has been terrible. I normally go 3 or 4 times a year back to my hometown to visit friends and family, and you wouldn't know it to look at me, but I'm a runner, and we run a race in Lexington, Kentucky called Run the Bluegrass every year until the pandemic hit. So because it was twofold. We go run the race, then we go do the Bourbon Trail.
Yeah, well, you have to. You're there. Yeah,
you have to. You're there. That's right. It's exactly it. Yeah. So if anyone who's watching this, if you enjoyed it, please click like. If you want, please subscribe and click the bell to be notified. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, questions for Dave, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I will forward them on. Or if he happens to look at the YouTube thing after we're done here, he can answer them himself.
Absolutely.
Again, the name of Dave's podcast is Beer in Front, right?
Yes, correct.
And do a search for it. Find it where you listen to your podcast. If you don't want to look at our ugly mugs all the time, you just want to hear his dulcet tones talking about beer. Hey, there you go. Yeah. Until next time, I'm Rob from the internet. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, Rob.